Welcome to America's Top Rebbetzins. May this class be for Refuah Shalema, for Chaim Aviel Ben Rus, and Livko Bat Maria Mazal. I'm so excited to have on today's show Rebbetzin Ilana Cowland. Rebbetzin Ilana is originally from London, England. She attended BJJ Seminary in Jerusalem and then received a BA in Jewish Studies from the University of London, as well as a diploma in counseling. She spent 9 years working as a Rebbetzin in the London Aish HaTorah community. Rebbetzin Ilana is a special out-of-town guest as she and her family currently live in Israel, where she has been involved in teaching and education administration, including 3 years as a principal of a seminary for post-high school graduates. She is a sought-after lecturer, educator internationally with specialties in the topics of relationships and women's issues. Wow, what amazing accomplishments. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Oh, well, it depends when, if you'd have asked me before COVID, it was a very different answer to the answer that I give now.
I can imagine.
But I think God knows where you need to be at what time. And I've been very, very busy at home dealing with a million different things, and actually really like having a nice time of just really embracing my mummy role in a very serious way over the last 18 months or more. We did have a nice Corona hobby. We started an Instagram channel for relationship videos. My husband and I, it was really fun. So every week we would put up a 5-minute video to help either singles or people in relationships improve their relationships. So that was like the big Corona hobby. And apart from that, it's been home.
Wow. Oh, that is so cool about the relationships. Wow. About the relationship advice. I'm sure you were able to give amazing advice to all these women who've been struggling at home with their families, I don't want to say cooped up, but like pretty much stuck, for lack of a better word, stuck with their husbands and their children, not knowing what to do. It's been a tough time for everybody.
It has. You've got people who are so lonely, who are desperate to be in relationships, and people who know that they're blessed but are suffocating from their relationships. Everybody's had like a very interesting, totally different angle on their struggle, but it's been a time that's really challenged us, and the cracks that were there have shown through, really come through, and we've had to really make sure that we do the work to make sure that those cracks didn't get bigger. It's been a big time for people.
Is there something that you could share with us from that podcast, or from the information that you had shared with the other women, something to help our listeners really, with our relationships and building and solidifying their relationships with their significant others?
Yeah. I mean, this is something that I think isn't generally true when you have a big challenge, but, when there's a big challenge and you're in a relationship, there's suddenly 3 components. There's you, there's your spouse or significant other, and then there's the unwanted party. And very often, by the way, the unwanted thing may be anything. It could be, God forbid, an illness in the family. It could be being out of a job. It could be, a child struggling with their Jewish identity. It could be many, many things. What tends to happen quite naturally is that the sort of enormity and the unexpectedness of this third party comes in, and it really creates a wedge between the two of you. You find yourself extra stressed. You find yourself on different pages. You find yourself arguing over it. You find yourself accusing each other of the impact of or the reason why it's there, or who's to blame, and like one of the ideas that we shared, because we've experienced this in life, is that the minute that the two of you are facing a new challenge, you have to recognize that this challenge is not as strong as the two of you if you get together. So there has to be, and it's not just like in your heart, there has to be a conscious conversation of, okay, we need a battle plan over here. That means that we have to make sure that we're on the same page, and we've spoken out that page, and we found a way to be like allies in this war, and B, we are consciously not going to let this thing ram its way between us by being aware of the fact that this is a new pressure. Pressures are not great for relationships. And we're going to actually sort of like really band together to deal with this, because once we're doing it together, it's not bigger than the two of us. But that has to be conscious and articulated. And sometimes there really has to be work done to get people back on the same page as each other. And then suddenly it's almost like a bonding experience, because it's the two of us against this thing rather than this thing weakening us.
Right. And that makes perfect sense. And so that brings me to my next question. I mean, it's so important for a couple to bond together, together against the thing that's trying to weaken them. But what if there's a situation that only one person wants to work on the relationship and the other one doesn't. So it's hard to bond with somebody when they don't want to bond with you.
Yeah. So sometimes you have to be, like always, I gave a class the other day and I said, I'm going to share with you the best piece of wisdom that you ever heard. And this was it. You ready? Want to hear, Vera?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. You didn't understand what I said, did you?
I didn't.
You know why?
Why?
Because I didn't say in a language that you speak. Okay.
Yes.
This is like an Aramaic verse from a song that I know, and it could have been the best advice ever, but it's useless to you. If your spouse or your significant other isn't interested in, like, let's use this to bond us, because that's just like, oh no, they're just going to be irritating and want more from me. Right. You have to speak in a language that they understand. The language may be, I don't know how to deal with this. I need your input. I have a lot of respect for how you see this, and I'm struggling. I'm feeling lonely. Like, what is the language that will actually, speak to the person that you're talking to in a way that will get a response from them? If you continue to speak in your language and not theirs, they're not going to understand what you're trying to say, and they're not going to respond. So in all communication, the rule number one is, like, do I know the language of the person that I'm talking to? And that, I don't mean English, right. I mean the language. Yes. I mean that which gets their attention, that which makes them take you seriously, that which, sort of like, whatever it does, maybe it makes them feel that they're going to rescue you because they're a rescuer. Maybe that makes them feel that their opinion is valid because they want to be respected. Maybe that makes it, them feel compassionate because you don't, like, who are they and how do you talk to them? If we don't figure that out, we're going to spend our lives talking to walls.
Wow. That's very powerful, because that's key. You're right. You could be talking to somebody, yes, in their spoken language, which is either English, Russian, French, Hebrew, whatever that is. Yeah. And they may hear and understand the words that you're saying, but you're not really communicating with them on a deep emotional level. So they're not really getting you, so to speak. So they're not really absorbing what you have to say.
Right. That's right. We see this with kids the whole time. It's like, people will tell me, I nag my kids and they ignore me and they ignore me. I'm like, yeah, because you're sending out a vibe of, like, switch off this annoying noise. Like, they don't want to hear you. You have to change how you're talking. Don't say to the kids, you need to clean up. It's such a mess in here. Maybe you need to say, whoever's room is clean first will get an ice cream. Like, speak in the language of the person that you're talking to, and you'll get a response out of them. ABCs.
That's a huge game changer, though. That's so powerful. It sounds very, very basic, but it's a huge, huge game changer if we can follow this advice. It's amazing. Thank you.
Of course.
And so I know one of the things that you're really passionate about is women's emotional health and well-being, particularly in the area of understanding our own thoughts and how those thoughts have a profound effect on us. And as women, I mean, we have thousands of thoughts floating around our heads every day. We worry about the issues we have with our husbands, or when we're going to find our husbands, if we're not married. We worry about our kids, or when we're going to have kids. We worry about our parents. We think about what we're going to make for dinner, where we're going to go on vacation, and we wonder why that person took our parking spot when clearly we were waiting 10 minutes for that parking spot. And we have thoughts of all kinds all day, and some of them are positive, and honestly, some of them are not so positive. And I feel like sometimes when we have negative thoughts, we get stuck in them and we cannot get out of that negative mindset. So I want to see if you could please share with us about how we don't have to be victims to our own negative thoughts, and how we can really, really control our thoughts so we can be in a positive mindset and move forward.
Okay. So I have nothing interesting to share with you in terms of controlling thought. However, I have something interesting to share in terms of understanding how thought works.
Great.
Okay. Once you have an understanding of how thought works, even if it's a small understanding, this could be very impactful. It was impactful in my life, and I love sharing this particular idea. Okay. And that is, like, when we talk about free will, right? If I were to ask you to name a free will decision that you've made, could you name one or two? Like, what's a typical free will decision?
A typical free will decision. Whether I'm going to choose to eat something healthy for breakfast or something sweet,
right.
Not so healthy.
Right. Okay, good. And the answer is always have the chocolate with the coffee, because that's how you should start your day. That,
exactly.
Right?
That's right.
Okay. I have found that whenever I ask this question, there is a common theme to all the answers that I get, and that is that people will name me an action. Okay, because we live in societies that tell us that there are things that we can do and things that we cannot do. And if we do certain things, we'll be fine. And if we do the other things, we'll be fined or jailed or something, you know. So we grow up, even if we're Jewish, we grow up with a very strong sort of, you know, secular understanding of good behavior, which is think what you like, feel what you like, but just do what you're told, what you're supposed to do. And what this means is that we can be the most fantastic, you know, doers. We can be on committees and feeding our children and eating those salads and getting dressed and going to the gym, and we can be looking impressive and even intimidating and together. And inside our heads and our hearts, we can be a complete mess.
Right.
And that's absolutely fine so long as we're behaving well. Okay. Nobody wants to see somebody behaving in a way that shows mental breakdown. Nobody wants to see that. Everybody wants to see you functioning, because we live in the world of what you do. You're judged on what you do. Nobody cares about what you think, if you keep it in your mind, and nobody cares about what you feel. So we've lost the art of understanding where we have free will and how we think and feel, because nobody really cares.
Wow,
okay?
That's fascinating. Yes, I agree.
Okay. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about, or even less hopefully, about what it means to have free will when it comes to your thoughts. Okay, because like you said, there are so many thoughts, and you know, I could never write down, I mean, it's already 4 o'clock in the afternoon because I'm Israel time. If you asked me to write down an inventory of all my thoughts today, there's no way I could do it. I've had so many thoughts. And most of those thoughts are fine. And then there are the ones that really bother me. You know, like, what am I doing with my life? And, you know, like, you know, am I boring? And, you know, like, did I give the right food to my kids? Or are they going to feel like I'm, you know, just like cheating them out of like nutrition? And do I look okay? Have I put on weight? And, you know, sometimes we have thoughts that really are like really negative, and they take us into very negative places. And I learned an idea. I learned it originally in the context of what's called the 3 principles or innate health. But then I saw it in a Jewish source, which, you know, was extremely powerful. And I love the way that it was phrased. I heard it. I don't remember where I had it, but I'm quoting Rebbetzin Solomon, who's obviously a very famous rabbi in America. And the quote that I heard was, "We are not responsible for our first thought. And understanding that is the underpinning of sanity." Okay, this is a very big statement, and we have to break it down. Okay, what does it mean that you're not responsible for your first thought? What's a first thought mean?
The very first thing that comes into your mind.
Yeah, okay. And every new conversation, there's another first thought, right? So I'm walking, you know, down the street, and I'm like, wow, that woman looks terrible. Ooh, I'm such a bad person, right? You know, well, that man looks wonderful. Oh, I'm such a terrible person. Like, whatever your first thought is, he says, and it's so important to know this, you know, if you were really responsible for that first thought, how many thoughts have you had that would have put you in prison if anybody could read your mind?
Oh,
or put you in
thousands.
Yeah, totally. Or put you in a psychiatric unit, or lost you a bunch of friends. Okay. So we have to know that thoughts, if you like, that sort of come our way, we are not responsible for. They're not a reflection of how good or bad we are. Whatever thought comes. I'm not responsible for that. And nor do I have to like feel the guilt of the responsibility for that. And otherwise, if I have an angry thought, a sexual thought, an aggressive thought, a twisted thought, I think I'm, you know, crazy, dangerous, you know, a maniac or whatever that is. And we all have those thoughts. We all have those thoughts, because any thought can come visit us. It's not a reflection of who we are. But if you look carefully at what he's saying, knowing that you're not responsible for the first thought is underpinning of sanity. You're not crazy if you had a crazy thought. That makes sense. But what it teaches us, which is fascinating, is that we're not responsible for the first thought, but we can take responsibility for the ensuing thought.
Right.
Which means if I have a thought which is like, I want to kill her, that's fine. You know, I'm just, you know, at this point now, I have a choice whether I follow that thought through. Now, if I follow that thought all the way through, I'm going to go from thought to emotion and to action if there's nothing stopping me. I'm going to say, yeah, I really want to kill her. I can't believe she did this. And then I'm going to get all riled up and create the huge story. And, you know, if society didn't stop me, I might even take out a gun and go all the way.
Right.
Okay. And again, we know you can want to kill her. You can think to kill her. You can feel like killing her. Just don't kill her. Okay. We've only been told the line needs to be drawn at action.
Yes.
But we're learning over here that you don't have to draw the line in terms of responsibility for a thought that comes your way. But once it comes your way, you have the choice whether you follow it through or not.
True. I agree. Yes.
And this is why what's so important about this is because we think that we're responsible for the first thought, we never assume responsibility for the second thought, meaning it's my thoughts. It's who I am that's taking blame, or there's nothing I can do about it. That's not taking blame. But we're making an incredibly important distinction here, that any old unwanted random thought may come to visit you at any time. But what happens next is something that you have choice. So again, if I feel like I'm a bad person because I have a bad thought, I'm going to go into that negative thinking. Or if I feel like I have no control over any of my thoughts, then I'm not going to make a distinction between the first thought and the second thought. I'm just going to go there. But once I know that the first thought is a free thought, but after that, I can say, I don't have to go there. So I can have an insecure thought. I can think to myself, wow, I think everybody got together and they didn't invite me. Like that thought can come visit me. But then I can say, where am I going from here? Am I going down to that place of self-doubt and self-consciousness and pity and rejection? Or am I going to take myself there? Because really what happens now, I do have control over. Or am I going to say, okay, there was the thought, now what? And here's the amazing thing about thought. Can we pretend to play ball, Vera?
Sure.
Once, I know we're on Zoom. Okay, so I'm going to throw the ball to you. Catch?
Yep.
Okay, now throw the ball to me. Throw the ball to me.
Throw. Yep.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm going to throw it back to you. Ready?
Yep. Got it.
Okay, throw it back to me. Good. Now throw it back to me. The game is now over because I didn't catch the ball.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. The thought comes to me. It's throwing a ball at me. If I catch it and throw it back, I'm now playing ball. If I decide to do nothing, the end of the game. So that thought that I am not responsible for can come and knock on my door, but then I have to decide, am I going to let you in and talk to you? Right. And you know what happens if a thought comes and you do absolutely nothing, which means neither do you agree with it, nor do you engage in it, nor do you refute it. You just do nothing. You put your hands up in the air as that ball is thrown at you. You know what happens to a thought?
It goes away?
Yeah. Because it only turns into a conversation if you engage back. It's like a ball game.
Right.
So when I have a thought and I'm not feeling responsible for it, I can say, wow, that was a terrible thought today. Isn't that interesting? And then I do this. And if I don't take the bait, guess what? Another thought comes, but it's a different thought. Right. That's right. It's a different thought. So once I understand how thinking works and where my responsibility is, I can pull back from those conversations in my head that take me to the places that aren't good for me.
That's very, very powerful. And it's so true. It's so, so true. And I love what you said about, when you're somewhere, you're in the supermarket or you're waiting for the train and everybody's lined up nicely. Everybody's doing their own thing. You have no idea what's going on in somebody's head. They could be having an argument with somebody else inside of their own head. You would never, ever know. They could be going through the most angst, like they could be so depressed, so anxious, so angry. And they're there in the supermarket, picking the apples, picking the tomatoes. And you're thinking, wow, such a normal looking person. And really there's like a battle raging inside their head.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And then every so often we hear about, those crazy people who killed 50 people in their backyard. And they were just the people who took all those other emotions and took it to the next level and acted. But we do not want to be teetering on that edge. We want to be way back in the place of, I don't go to unhealthy places in my mind,
Right.
And unhealthy places in my mind begins with thought.
We thought, exactly. Okay. Well, so I feel like we can all relate to examples of everyday life situations. And based on what you were saying, I wanted to see if maybe you could share with us an example or two from your personal life where maybe you've had to battle with negative thoughts of any kind and you overcame that struggle by, you overcame the struggle to be pulled down by the negative and you kind of stopped that thought and you went on to a different thought, like something real that happened to you in your life.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not, I could tell you one story, I could tell you 1,000, but the truth is this happens all the time because I'm consciously aware of how my thought works.
Yes.
So I'm constantly finding myself, either being really conscious of the fact that, oh, there was a first thought, don't get into it. or, and pulling back from what would have been an emotional disaster,
Right.
like, so, my husband might make a comment and, I can hear myself saying, I can't believe he said that, and that was so insensitive, and doesn't he know, blah, 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 and I have saved myself so many like bad moments by saying, okay, the thought that occurred to me was like, I can't believe he said that, and then recognizing, okay, where do I go from here? Do I go from, he was just being funny, do I just let it go? Do I say, honey, can you rephrase that? Like, I have a choice at that point. And, I try and do this very consciously, but I wanted to say, I'm more so interested in talking about when I fail to do this.
Okay, yes, yes, give us an example.
Okay.
Too. Yes.
Because when I fail to do this, what happens is suddenly, I kind of like forgot to catch that moment where I was at first thought, second thought, and I'm just there already. I mean, and for me, I guess my tendencies might be to go to a place of self-consciousness, or to go to a place of, feeling like I'm not doing enough, or that, guilt, whatever my things are, abandonment. We all have our various like beaten tracks, but what I found very amazing is that it's not about succeeding every time, because very often you won't. You'll find yourself engaging in your thoughts without even realizing it, and before you know it, you're in this like darker place. But what I've noticed is that because I understand what's happened, because I understand that all that happened was I engaged in a thought and it took me to a place,
Yes.
I can take it a little bit less seriously, meaning it's a little bit like the difference between going, in a really bad car ride and going on a roller coaster, like a really bad car ride is very, very scary if you think you're going to die, going on a roller coaster can also be scary, and it can also make you scream. But if you understand what's happening, even if you're already on that roller coaster, it can take the edge off the experience. If you're on a roller coaster and you think you're in a car, then you're in trouble. Okay, because then you think you're just like about to die, But once I know that, once I can, and very often if I'm in a bit of a low place, and my husband will say, you okay, honey? And I'll say, yeah, I kind of just let my thinking get to me today, and he'll say, okay. And I'll say, okay, I could do with some like hot chocolate and some, and my bed for like a little bit. But I understand that what isn't happening is that the world's gone sour. What's happened is that my mind is taking me to a place where I'm seeing the world through darker glasses. But I also know that that's going to shift, because I'm going to have, if I don't fight myself too hard, there's going to be new thoughts that come, and they're going to take me to better places. So it's not always about getting this right. It's about understanding what's happening when you get it wrong, and being able to say, okay, I'm in a low thinking place today. I fell into the trap and I'm in a low thinking place today. But it doesn't mean that the world is worse than it was this morning, and it doesn't mean that everything's terrible. It just means that I took my thoughts too seriously. And if I can know that that is all that's happened, it's much easier for me to not get sucked into what my thoughts are trying to make me believe, and to sort of wait it out. And then, and that sort of like pulling the like the Emperor's New Clothes situation, where you recognize that you fall into a thought trap rather than what your thoughts are telling you are the truth about who you are. That already makes it easier to say, okay, I'm feeling a bit down right now, but I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. And there's a place deeper in me than my thoughts that is always okay. There's a place in me where I know everything's okay, where the world is centered, where I'm not too high or too low. I'm just kind of in a well-being place. And I'm going to get back to that, because that's my always mode. And when I get knocked off it, it's okay, because I'm a weeble wobble, I'm going to get back into my center any minute now. And I find that that's also really important, to not just not fail at this, but to understand what's happening when you do go down to that place, and to be able to just give the time that is necessary for you to naturally sort of recover your groundedness.
Right. No, it's so important, because, there's some people who are just, they're deep in depression. It's almost beyond like being stuck in a bad place. They're in a pit, and all they can see is black. And it hasn't been black just for one day. It's been black for days, weeks, months, even years, and it's serious. A lot of people are on depression medication, antidepressants,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
really hard, because they're really genuinely stuck,
Right.
Is there something you can do when you're like, you're so stuck, you're beyond stuck in that negative zone?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to people with depression, and very often, it's very, very hard to be incredibly consistently depressed, meaning even people who are deep in depression will have cracks where the light comes through a little bit,
Okay.
and I think it's very important for us to begin the process of believing that it's, the depression is, it's an illness, it's a mindset, it's very, very overwhelming. But the truth of who we are lies in the cracks of light, lies in those moments of okayness that we sometimes experience even through a depression. And I think that's very, very important for us to believe more deeply in our wellness than in our illnesses.
Wow.
It's very,
That's
very important.
powerful. Yes.
I'm also like just currently, I read something very beautiful on some kind of stupid post the other day, but I thought it was very true. Like something along the lines of, if you go to your doctor for anxiety and they don't ask you how you're eating, how you're sleeping, what your friends are like, blah, 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 then they're not, they're not looking after your health. They're a drug pusher, And, we are very, very much in a state of anxiety, and a global state of anxiety. Corona has really put the heat up on the anxiety, and I'm sure that's all part of the great plan, because maybe anxiety will lead us somewhere in the end. Maybe it'll lead us to stop like kidding ourselves that everything's fine and actually like take a look on the inside what's happening. But I do think that the anxiety to some degree is like the final symptom of a whole bunch of things that have gone wrong in our life. And I think it's really important not just to beat the anxiety with medication, but to ask, are all the pieces in place? Those pieces might mean, am I getting enough quiet time with nature? Do I have enough of a connection to a community to whom I belong? Am I having creative expression? I have a whole list of them. I'm in the process of writing them all up, but there are different aspects of our life, and if they're all in place, then we might still experience, anxious moments and anxiety. We may have a biological tendency or genetic tendency towards it, but we cannot expect our mental health to maintain itself when everything in our life that needs to be in order is upside down, and then we're just trying to fight anxiety.
Right.
There are pieces that need to be in place. Like somebody was telling me once that they had a terrible issue with their jaw kept on clicking out. And they went to see some like, I don't know, homeopathic doctor, and the doctor punched them in the hips. Okay, and they passed out from the pain, but they'd been walking around for like 20 years with a dislocation in their hips, so their jaw kept on popping out because they weren't aligned properly.
Wow.
It's like, if everything is off, then we're going to feel it in our mental state. Right. We have to make sure that we start at our feet and we move to our knees and we move to our hips, and if everything is in place, then you can assume your jaw is going to work, because like your jaw should work if everything else is in place. We're putting so much focus on our anxiety, and we're not really asking the question, what's missing in my life that I'm experiencing this horrible symptom of anxiety? How fast is my life? How empty is my life? How lonely is my life? How godless is my life? If I'm empty and lonely and pressured and godless, surprise, surprise, I'm going to experience anxiety. And Corona's just made us slow down so we could actually realize how crazy our lives have become over the last, 50 years, and, we have to rethink the entire body so that we can make sure that jaw's working,
It's such an interesting perspective. You're right. There are things in our lives that are not aligned. It's not surprising that we're going to be anxious, depressed, upset, and that our thoughts are going to be all crazy and negative. We really have to take a great stock about what's going on in our lives. That's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. And I mean, along the lines of having the ability to have some kind of power over our thoughts to control them somewhat. I want to talk a little bit about the concept of Bahira, which is free will, the freedom of choice, which I feel like can be a confusing concept, because Hashem, God, is really in control of what happens to us. He's in control of the results, in control of the outcomes, and our free will is actually limited to basically what we think and what we say and what we do, as you were saying. And I just wanted to ask if you can please clarify for us the concept of actual free will and what it means for us practically in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah. there's lots of things in our life that we experience as choices, and then we see they're not really choices. Like you'll find yourself having to choose between, I don't know, one kind of ice cream or the other kind of ice cream. It's not a choice. You might find yourself driving and you meant to go left, and by accident you turned right and you bumped into a friend. There was no choice in that either. Choice means, to me, okay, and of course God knows what I'm going to choose, because there's nothing that God doesn't know, but the point is that I don't know it. So when I'm in the middle of making a choice, I'm the one who doesn't know it. If I'm making a difficult choice, I don't find myself closing my eyes and God makes it for me. Like, I still have to go through the pain of choosing.
Exactly.
Choice really means when in front of me there is a fork in the road, and one of those forks represents comfort and the other fork represents effort.
Right.
Okay. And the effort there means that by choosing that, I'm going to take one step higher in my personal, growth ladder, and one step closer to godliness and to connection with God by doing the right thing. Now, when I say comfort or effort, sometimes the right choice is to go to bed because you don't get enough sleep. So it doesn't mean you can't ever do anything comfortable. But if a person is struggling with going to bed, their natural inclination is to tell them, stay up, stay up, stay up, stay up. They have to make an effort to say, I have to put myself to bed right now. It's the choice of that which is good over that which is, my nature or my nurture, and isn't going to get me to the place that I need to get. Not all our choices have to feel uncomfortable, but we have to find ourselves saying, I'm sitting in front of a choice right now. One of them is natural to me, even if it's bad for me. And one of them is stepping slightly outside of my comfort zone, but it's going to get me a better result. Am I going to stay angry with my friend, or am I going to reach out and apologize? That will bring me much more pleasure in the end, but I have to step out of my comfort zone. Am I going to speak kindly to the people around me, or am I going to shout because I'm in a bad mood? It might be nice. It might be more pleasant to speak nicely, but it's more easy for me to shout because that's what I always do. Here's the fork in the road. Nobody knows except for God, and it doesn't help me because he hasn't told me. Okay.
Right.
Nobody knows which one I'm going to choose, but one will take me to a better place in who I am, and one will take me further away. And when I can identify that and take responsibility to know that I am the author of my own life, and I will end up going wherever I put myself based on whether I just shouted or whether I was patient, whether I went to sleep or whether I just deprived myself of more sleep, whether I made out with my friend or whether I stayed in a burgers. That fork in the road is up to me. And when I see a moral choice, not a chocolate vanilla choice, but a moral choice, and I feel the struggle and I do my best to do the right thing, I'm experiencing a good Bechira choice. And that can be in what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm doing, what I'm not doing. It affects us all over the place in all aspects of our life.
That's amazing. And it's so true. It's so true. It's so the irony of the situation is that today I brought my girls to school and I came home, and as I was getting out of my car, a neighbor he lives a couple of doors down, he came up to me and he said to me, Vera, I'm really struggling. This is a true story. This happened to me this morning. True story. I'm not making this up. He said, Vera, I'm really struggling. I'm wavering. He's having a difficult time with his spirituality, and he wanted some advice. He wanted some hizuk from me. He wanted some strength from me. He's like, yeah. What should I do? Where should I go? He felt specifically for him in his situation that there were a lot of restrictions, especially in Judaism. He grew up Jewish. He grew up in this lifestyle, and now he's a little bit older. I don't know, maybe he's in his 70s, maybe. I'm not sure exactly how old he is, but he's really struggling with those restrictions. And he's like, Vera, I'm wavering. I'm really wavering. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
His kids are grown. He doesn't have babies anymore. He doesn't, he and his wife live by themselves. And they just, he's looking at other areas and saying, maybe it's more fun. Like, he's really struggling with those moral choices that you're talking about, and he was looking to me for guidance. I just see that because that's such in his free will box,
Yeah.
Totally. Like, where does he go from there? So my point in saying that is, like, people really struggle with this. And a lot of times they take the easy way out. You know what I'm talking about? Like you were saying, the fork in the road, the one where it takes a little bit more effort and the one that's a little bit more comfortable. So like, I feel like, especially in Judaism, I mean, in every aspect of life for sure, but I feel like especially in Judaism and the people that I speak with, taking the moral choice that maybe requires a little bit more effort, that's a little bit more difficult, something that they're not used to, it's something that they struggle with, and they feel so uncomfortable that they don't always go that route. They go with the route that they're more comfortable with, that they're more used to. I was just wondering, maybe what advice would you give to this man or others? There's so many others like him.
Oh my goodness, there's such bad marketing surrounding Judaism. Like Judaism has become like this big list of no's, this big fat party pooper,
That's exactly how he felt.
I do want to share something actually, which is very dear to my heart, So I think it is the tradition of every woman at the beginning of the week to decide what she's going to deprive herself of so that she's thin by the end of the week. And I'm not the only one, right? Tell me that we all do this. Yeah.
No, for sure. All of us. Yes.
We all do this, right? Like this is going to be the week until I'm hungry at 10 a.m., in which case I'm going to have that chocolate bar. But so, I suddenly noticed something very interesting, that like I've been doing this regularly. Like, okay, what am I going to promise I'm not going to eat this week? What am I going to cut out of my diet this week? But and I thought to myself, it's really strange because like over the last, 10 years, I've been following this ritual. Hasn't made any difference. It just makes me like hungry and irritated. And maybe I'm doing something wrong, So I decided to ask myself a different question. And it was the first time I had ever asked myself this question. The question was not, what can I deprive myself of this week in the name of health and fitness? The question was, what can I give to myself this week? What would my body like that I don't give it enough of?
Right.
And I had a very, very fast answer. Two things, and it's not, any nutritionist will say duh, but I was like, you need to drink more and we need to get more vegetables into your diet, And for the first time in I don't know how long, instead of starting the week off with a deprivation list, I started the week off with an addition list. And It's probably the first week that I lost weight in about 5 years. Because guess what?
Game changer.
Yeah, because when my body was getting like nutrients and water, it didn't need all that, all those carbs. Right. And when that happened to me, I thought to myself, my goodness, this is so true of Judaism. We look at Judaism as what I can't do on Shabbat and what I can't eat and where I can't go. And when we turn Jewish restriction into an unpleasant experience, I believe that there's a Yetzer Hara in that. And when people are struggling with their growth and their Judaism, I think they need to a little bit not worry about all the restrictions that they're struggling with, and ask themselves a more important question, which is, how can Judaism be a pleasure in my life? What can I do more of that is going to make me feel more connected? And they might suddenly find that they're answering things like, I need to connect through meditation, or I need to learn how to do that, or I need to engage in giving in a way that makes me feel like I'm contributing, or there's so much pleasure in Judaism. And I understand there's restriction too, but if you're struggling and you feel like you're teetering over the edge of, like, I can't do this anymore, stop asking, what can I deprive myself of? And ask myself, how can I sweeten my relationship with this so that this has brought more joy into my life? And you'll find, by the way, that you eat less carbs. When you spend your whole week, giving to the poor or smiling at people, because you want to be a good person, you'll find that you're not under the stress of like, I can't put my TV on Shabbat, because you filled that Jewish space with something that's joyous and fulfilling. It doesn't feel like it's strangling you and demanding of you. It's just the same. It was exactly the same idea as that food experience. If you fill yourself with the stuff that gives you joy, the stuff that you shouldn't be doing, there'll be less space for it because you'll be so full.
Wow, that's amazing. It's really the key, of thinking, what can I add? How can I enrich myself? How can I make this better? As opposed to, how can I deprive myself? What can I limit? It's a shift in thinking. It's a significant shift in thinking.
It's a shift in thinking. And the crux of the shift is that God isn't trying to punish me with his laws.
Right.
It's a shift into, God actually loves me and wants what's best for me. And maybe I'm not able to appreciate all the rules that are going to be good for me, but to be able to relate to Judaism, which really is, a directive from God. If you're looking at God as someone as a being who wants the best for you and loves you and cares about you, you'll have a much easier time assuming that you can have a joyous experience over here. If you see God as tyrannical or, some kind of egomaniac that's out to get you because you're projecting bad teacher experiences on God, then you're going to assume that Judaism is there to cripple your life. The deep shift is God loves me. That's the deep shift over here.
Right, exactly. Wow. And I mean, along those lines of people struggling with, what choices to make in Judaism, and other choices, moral choices that they need to make as well. Part of me feels that we're living in a spiritual desert. It really does. I mean, we have so many distractions around us. I mean, so many things vying for our attention. I mean, especially technology. The phone is ringing, the WhatsApp is dinging, the chicken is burning in the oven, and you just have to send that one last text and the kid is crying. I mean, we have so many distractions. It's hard to center yourself. It's hard to get yourself together to think about what are my priorities? What should I really be doing here? I feel like it's hard to focus, at least for me. I feel like it's oftentimes very hard to focus myself. And, in this fast-paced society where everybody's running around, I just want to see in the last few minutes that we have left, if you can give us some nuggets on how we can regain focus on what's really, really important so that we can live life with purpose.
Okay. Big question, and it's an amazing question. And I guess I'll share one nugget, which is like this. There's a lot of static in our minds. There's an awful lot of noise.
Yes.
And it's very loud and it's very fast. And it's not only in our minds, it's in our screens, it's in our 15 different screens, it's our phone, it's everywhere. And the faster the phones go, the louder the static goes. And what's happened is that, people often ask me, how do I know the difference between my Yetzer Hara and my Yetzer Tov? Like I said before, sometimes it's my Yetzer Hara that's saying go to bed because I'm lazy. And sometimes it's my Yetzer Hara that's sending my Yetzer Tov that's sending me to bed because I'm exhausted. Like, how do you know which one's which when often they sort of have each other's scripts?
Yes.
Yeah. And, I think one of the best answers that I found to that is you can't tell a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer Tov in what they're saying, because again, for different people, different situations, the same sentence can come out of each one of their mouths, right? You can have a Yetzer Hara that says, don't be friends with that woman. And you can have a Yetzer Tov that says, don't be friends with that woman. It's not that you can't judge, because, we're not at a stage where we have one little devil sitting on our shoulder going, eat the Big Mac, and and the blue devil and the blue angel going, no, say Psalms. It's not that simple. That would be easy. It's not that simple. And what I've noticed when this is a really important question. You can go for years thinking that you have a Yetzer Hara, a Yetzer Tov, because it's trying to make you do more and more and more, and it's really just driving you into a nervous breakdown. And you're like, wow, that was a Yetzer Hara all that time trying to crash me. I thought it was making me do better, good things all day long. It's so important to know the difference. And I noticed that the difference is not what they're saying, but how they're saying it. Okay. Because the Yetzer Hara sounds like this. And the Yetzer Tov sounds like this. Ding. It doesn't need to say it a million times. It doesn't need to come at with different angles at you. It doesn't shout at you. It just says its piece, and you can take it or leave it. The Yetzer Hara will get louder and louder and louder, and the Yetzer Tov will always and forever remain this small voice that says, ding. So this is what's happened. We can't hear our inner wisdom anymore because our inner wisdom doesn't shout.
Right.
All we're hearing are the loud static voices of urgency and pressure and guilt and more and consumerism and technology and porn and the whole, we're hearing the things that shout. So I don't think I can tell you anything about how to get fulfillment, but I think you can. I think we can, but we need to be able to hear the wisdom inside of us that will only be able to be heard above the noise if we switch the noise off every so often. And if we refuse to switch the noise off, we're not going to hear our inner wisdom, because our inner wisdom isn't shouting. It's just talking, and it'll say it nicely, and it'll say it once. And you don't want to bring yourself to a situation where you have to be so on your knees that you can finally hear your inner wisdom, because you've just lost it completely. People hear their inner wisdom when they're in a very elevated, quiet place, or they're in a they're on their knees in crisis. That's when they hear their inner wisdom. Most of us are functioning dangerously somewhere in between, which means we can go for an awfully long time without quietening down those voices and hearing ourselves. Right. So we have to make it a practice to to switch the sound off. That might be switching your phones off. That might be Shabbat. That might be going for a walk in nature. That might be talking slowly, once in a while to somebody old. Like there are ways where we can, but if we keep that noise loud, we will not hear the part of us that is trying to guide us, because we'll drown it out. And when I know that my inner wisdom offers me wisdom for fulfillment, for what I need from life, when I know that, I want to listen to it, but I have to actually be able to hear it. So we've got to switch the radio off. We've got to switch the radio off so we can hear our wisdom.
Wow. That's really, really important. You're right. You're right. Because we're going 24/7 at a frenzied pace, and we don't often take that time to just turn everything off and just be with ourselves.
Yes. And we do it so little that for many people, like we said at the beginning, when Corona happened and they were forced to do it, for some people, they had the most unbelievable insights as to the changes they wanted to make in their lives. And some people were so unused to it that they couldn't cope with it. We do not want to hit a stage in our frenzy that we're so addicted to our frenzy that we cannot enjoy moments of quiet and wisdom. That means we've gone too far. We've gone too far, and we have to turn it down. If I'm so addicted to the noise and the static and the urgency that I'm feeling more anxiety by experiencing peace, something has just gone too far. And I have to say, something has to give over here.
Wow, that's amazing. It's addicted to the frenzy. That's so interesting. I've never heard it phrased exactly like that, but you're right on target. And you're right. We have to stop. We have to move away from being addicted to the frenzy and more to just a deep breath, relax, connecting with ourselves, figuring out our Yetzer Tov versus our Yetzer Hara, so we could proceed in the right direction. It's amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Rebbetzin Ilana, for taking the time to join us on America's Top Rebbetzins. We really appreciate you being here. And we hope that all the powerful learning that we did here today would be for the Refuah Shalema of Lipko Bat Maria Mazal and also Chaim Aviel Ben Ruth. If anyone in the audience has any questions or comments about the podcast, or if anyone would like to sponsor a podcast, please email us at atrebbetzins@gmail.com. That's atrebbetzins@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for having me, Vera. It's very nice to be here with you, and much luck much blessing in giving people the wisdoms that they need to have the lives that they want.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you.